Hey everyone, today we're going to be taking a look at what I think might be the best new whitetail archery hunting site on the market today. Let's take a look. Hey everyone, welcome back to The Budget Sportsman. Thank you so much for joining me on today's video. If you're new to the channel, we're all about enjoying the sports of hunting and fishing and the outdoor lifestyle, but doing it on a budget. Today, I am super excited to be bringing you a review of this brand new Trophy Ridge Hotwire bow sight. Now, before we go any further, let me give a huge shout out and thank you to Trophy Ridge. I saw this site online and was super intrigued by it. And so I sent Trophy Ridge a message asking if they'd be willing to sponsor an episode by sending me a site for review. They came through, sent me the site, and they're sponsoring this episode, so big thank you to them. Now, for all of you watching, let me be quick to say, just because they sponsored the episode doesn't mean you're not going to get a fair and unbiased review. You're going to get my exact thoughts on this, including a few negatives, so make sure you watch all the way to the end to get the pros and the cons of this site. Let's open it up and see what you get inside. Inside the packaging, the first thing you're going to get, and what you're going to be most excited about, obviously, is the Hotwire bow sight. In addition to that, you're also going to get your little baggie with your 2 mounting screws, and you're also going to get some sight tape, since as you saw in the intro, this sight does have a movable pin. You're going to get 5 absolutely blank sight tapes, and then you're also going to get 5 that have some lines on them. Now, as far as I can tell, all 5 have the exact same line spacing, so they're not really going to work for different speeds, things like that, but they're going to give you a reference for where you're going to adjust your slider to. I'll talk more about that later in the video. Now let's talk about why I'm so excited about this new site. This site is really a hybrid site. And what I mean by that is it has 2 fixed pins, and what they're going to be for most of us are 20 and 30 yard pins. They don't move. I mean, they move to sight them in, but after that they're going to be fixed pins, just like a regular 3, 4, 5, 6 pin bow sight. But then the third pin has this knob up here and can be dialed in to exact yardages, just like a single pin or a slider, something along those lines. Why do I think this is so perfect, and why am I so excited about it, especially for whitetail deer hunting? Well, I have never personally taken a shot and really don't plan to take a shot at a deer over 30 yards. That's just my comfortable range. So for all of my regular whitetail deer hunting shots, I've got my 20 and 30 yard pins set. I never have to worry about it. One of my big fears about going to a slider site is that maybe I'd be practicing at 40 yards and I would forget to set it back up to 20, and then I would make a terrible shot at a deer because I forgot to set the sight back. Well, with this, you're never going to have to worry about that. You're always going to have your 20 and your 30 set, fixed, and ready to go. If for some reason you need to take a longer shot, a 40, a 42, a 45, a 46 yard shot, you can dial that in exactly with that third sliding or floater pin. This is also great for me for things like hunting, not only hunting, but also things like 3D. One of the things I discovered last year using my 5-pin sight was I was shooting 3D and I was shooting a bear at 45 yards. With fixed pin sights, I was gap shooting between my 40 and my 50 yard pin, and I just was not getting great results. I took a few steps farther back to where I was at 50 yards. That meant I was using an exact pin instead of gap shooting, and my shots improved even though the distance was 5 yards farther. And that is why I'm excited to have this movable pin that I can dial into exact yardages. If it's 45 yards, no problem, I've got a pin. If it's 47, no problem, I'll dial it right to 47. So I am super, super excited about the hybrid functionality of this bow sight. I've already been sighting it in some, and for me, at my bow speed, which is about 250 per second, not IBO, but real world speed is about 250 feet per second, this slider will get me out to about 65 to 70 yards. And I don't have my 20 set all the way at the top. If I was to set my 20 all the way at the top, I would have no problem getting a solid 70 yards. And if you have a bow that shoots much faster than 250 feet per second, you might even get out to 75 or 80 yards. Now let me give you a few quick specs before we go out and shoot this thing. Like I already mentioned, it's got 3 pins. They're each 19,000th of an inch. This comes in right-handed model. I do not believe that there's a left-hand model available yet. It does have a rheostat light built right into it, and it weighs in at 10 ounces if you're really interested in the nitty-gritty details. Now I think that's enough talking. Let's slap this thing on the bow and get to shooting. Well guys, I think I finally got this sighted in. To be honest, it's taken me a little bit of time because it's my first time really sighting in anything with a movable pin like this. Also, I had it sighted in yesterday, and then all of a sudden, I guess the screws for the second axis adjustment weren't quite tightened down, and so all of a sudden I was all over the place, and I realized it, tightened them down. Now I got it sighted again, in all over again. So to test out the single pin function, I've asked my wife to give me 3 varying yardages over 40 yards. She gave me 42, 47, and 58. I'm gonna dial in the single pin, see what I can do in this 3D target down here. All right, there's my 43 yards. Let's see what we can do on the buck. All right, here's 47. I've changed my pin from 43 down to 47. See if we can kill the buck again. A little forward, but that was just me. Let's go to 58. All right, here's our 58. This is kind of a long shot for me, but we're gonna see how the single pin helps us out. Let's go take a look and see how we did. Well guys, these are my 3 arrows. These 2 here are 43 and 58. And so really happy with both of those. This was my 47-yard shot, and that was not really an issue at all of the sight. That was just me pulling the shot. But still, elevation was good on that shot. Just pulled it to the left a little bit. I know this doesn't look like the best grouping in the world, but the thing that I'm really excited about is being able to dial that single pin down to an exact yardage. From out at 58 yards, if I had used a 60-yard pin, I would not have had a shot this successful. Just guessing at the yardage and the drop is really difficult. So overall, I'm really happy. Let me go back inside and give you my final thoughts on this sight. Well guys, I wish I could tell you it was all sunshine and roses, but there are definitely some pros and some cons to this sight. Let me be quick to say that the negatives that I have about this sight really are being very nitpicky, some very minor things that I kind of wish that Trophy Ridge could do differently, but I also recognize why they did certain things the way they did. Let's start with some of the negatives, and then let's get into the positives and the final conclusion to this sight. First of all, with the cons, the first one is really the biggest complaint that I have, and that is the ring around the sight housing. As you may be able to see, it's actually not a solid color of yellow or green or some bright color, but it alternates between light and dark. I'm used to the Trophy Ridge React 5, and on the Trophy Ridge React 5, it's one solid color, and to me, it's very bright. I've been shooting this sight for a while. I'm used to seeing it, and it's also glow in the dark. Now, maybe some of you can tell me why Trophy Ridge chose to do the alternating colors here on the ring, but to me, I just found that it didn't seem as bright, and it didn't seem quite as easy to line up with my peep sight when I was shooting. Now, I know that with time, I'm going to get used to this ring, and it's going to be no problem, but I just kind of wish if I could combine these 2 sights, I would definitely take the colored ring from around the sight housing from the React 5 and put it on the Hotwire. From there, my complaints get even more nitpicky. So the second thing I wanted to point out is this knob that controls the floater pin. When I first got the sight out of the box, it seemed very stiff. And so especially shooting outside with cold hands, it just was kind of hard to turn. And so I kind of wish that this knob was a little bit bigger, more cog shaped, something a little bit bigger and easier to grip onto to turn. Now let me also be quick to mention that in just a couple of days of shooting, I've already noticed that this thing seems to be running a lot smoother and easier to turn. So as it breaks in and gets smoother, I'm guessing it's really not going to be a problem. But just initial impressions was I just wish that it was a little bit bigger of a shape to grab onto. My next complaint, again being very petty, is these sight tapes. You know, I was a little disappointed in that these that have the markings on them are all exactly the same. Again, I totally and 100% realize that for trophy riggers to try to get sight tapes that match every single speed of bow would just about be impossible. And so they sent you something as a frame of reference. But to me, I just wasn't really happy using these. So what I ended up doing is I ended up finding a website that had a whole page full of all different sight tapes of different varying gaps and incremental lines and numbers and everything like that. I found one that worked perfectly. I just printed it out on a piece of paper to check it first and kind of taped it on. And once I was sure that that was going to be the right gaps and the right increments for my bow and my speed, I ended up printing that sight tape onto an adhesive label, like an address label, cutting it out, and stuck it right on there, and it worked perfectly. I'll leave a link for that website down below. Again, an easy solution, just something that I was a little disappointed about when I initially opened the package. The last little bit of a complaint that I would have is this pointer on this side that goes up and down to point to the sight tape. Out of the box, it's just kind of dark. I believe it's just black, and it just blends into the sight housing and the darkness behind the pin itself. Again, super easy solution. I found some fingernail polish, happened to find some blue, and I just dabbed a tiny little bit of blue fingernail polish on the end of that pointer, and it just provided a lot more contrast for me to be able to see it moving up and down. So once again, an easy solution to a very simple problem. Now, enough of the negatives. Let's get to what I absolutely love about this sight. First of all, metal construction. This is all metal. There's a little bit of plastic over here that covers up some of the internal mechanisms, but the frame of the entire thing, the sight housing, all of the attachment points is solid metal. Can't even say that about this React 5 that I've been using. It's almost entirely plastic. Weight is very similar on these two sights. Again, this is 10 ounces, about 10 and a half, but this is all plastic. This is metal. The second thing I love is that this is a toolless sight. Well, technically it's not toolless. It's advertised as toolless, but it actually has a built-in tool. So right up here on the top, you can spin this tool out, and this tool adjusts everything except the second axis adjustment. You will need an Allen wrench to do the second axis adjusting on this sight. But you put this tool in right up here, and it's a micro drive system to move the 20-yard pin, and then over here to the 30-yard pin, up and down. So even though it's not technically a toolless sight, it has the tool built right in, and so you don't need to worry about carrying Allen wrenches to the field. If you've ever been caught out in the field or out at the range and you needed to make an adjustment to your sight without Allen wrenches, you know that having a toolless sight is a big deal, and I really like the way Trophy Ridge implemented the toolless adjustment on this sight. The next thing I really love is that everything on this sight is all micro drive, micro adjust technology. So again, I just mentioned, but the 20 and 30-yard pins, all you do is you put that tool on there and move them up and down. Really easy to move, very incrementally. If you've ever used cheaper sights where you had to loosen a little Allen screw and the whole sight moved and you weren't sure how much you moved it, those days are gone with this sight. Use the tool, just turn it a little bit. You can move it up and down incrementally, micro drive. Also, your windage and elevation is a micro drive system. You need to use the tool to loosen the actual mechanism, but once you do, it's not just going to slide one way or the other like some other sites that do not have micro drive. And once you have it loosened up, there's going to be a knob here. This is going to be for your windage, and then another knob here for your elevation. And it's, again, micro drive. It's got plenty of nice little markings on it, so you know how far you've moved. You can tell whether you need to move 1 or 2 lines. Super easy. I love the micro drive system. Again, having some sites in the past that didn't have micro drive and micro adjust, and you would loosen up a bolt and the whole thing falls off to one side. You weren't sure where it was, and so you kind of are starting from scratch. That's a pain. Those days are gone with this sight. Love the micro drive system. I mentioned it at the beginning of the review, but I really love that 20 and 30-yard pins always stay the same once they're set. It's not like some other sites where maybe you have a actual slider sight or the whole housing moves. The housing doesn't move on this. And so your 20 and 30 will always be on. You never have to worry if a deer comes into 20, 25 yards. You're not going to have to worry. You know those sight pins are on and they're good to go. I love that. The next thing I absolutely love, and really the highlight of the whole site, is I love the movable pin. As you saw shooting, I've got some adjustment to do in my shooting. I made a bad shot there, but overall, I can dial into exact yardages out to 65 or 70 yards and, you know, hit a deer, hit a target, and really, really like the implementation of that with this knob up here. You know, I mentioned earlier, maybe it's not a perfect knob, but just the way it works, the whole functionality of it, the gear drive system that it has here, that's nice and smooth. You can dial it in. There's no need to lock anything. It's just stiff enough that it's going to stay in place. I really like that third pin slider. I like the hybrid functionality. The last thing that I like about this and the pro of this site is the price. I haven't mentioned this price yet, but this site is $159.99 retail on Trophy Ridge's website. Now, let me be quick to say I've seen it a lot cheaper in other places already. Even though it's a new site, just do a Google search and you're going to find some places that are already going to be cheaper than that $160 price mark. Now, being the budget sportsman, you say, well, that doesn't sound like a budget bow sight to me. Well, you're right. You could go to Walmart, you can buy a $22 sight, but for what you're getting, this is incredible value. There are a lot of other sites in the market that have similar functionality, kind of hybrid bow sights, whether they have 3 pins and the whole thing moves. You've got a lot of other companies making those things, but in my research, this is by far the cheapest version of a hybrid sight that I can find. This is at $160, but you can find them a lot cheaper. Most of the other sites that I saw were at least $210, all the way up to $350 for sites that do a similar thing. So even though right out of the box, $160 sounds like it's expensive, for what you're getting, this, I believe, is a good budget buy. So what's my final conclusion after giving you all the pros and the cons? Well, I have to say the bottom line is this is an awesome bow sight that gives you some hybrid functionality that's going to give you fixed pins. You're never going to have to worry about it, but also gives you that third pin to dial in whether you want to shoot an animal or whether you're shooting targets at long distances. I hope you enjoyed the review. If you would take a moment to let me know down in the comments what you think of this bow sight. If you enjoyed the video, consider giving me a thumbs up. And until next time, remember to get off YouTube and get outdoors into God's great creation.